As always, I am not advocating the use of what could be potentially illegal compounds wherever you are in the world, but to be honest, almost anywhere you are in the world, what I'm about to talk about is probably illegal. What I am actually talking about here is shedding a little bit of light on my experiences around these particular compounds, and if anything, kind of explaining why they shouldn't be illegal. If anything, this is a lesson on propaganda and mainstream opinion and, let's be honest, misinformation. Growing up as a youth in the 90s, the media messaging and narrative around MDMA and its common form in ecstasy was essentially one that it kills you, dead. They use a lot of real shock tactics. I remember newspapers rolling with crazy headlines and just posting pictures of dead people. I remember the fear amongst parents and the kind of stories we were told at school, or when people would come into the school to speak about these compounds and things. I mean, it really was essentially preparing you to be completely terrified. So understandably, when ecstasy, MDMA, I mean, it really was in its ecstasy form at the time, kind of presented itself amongst my peer group, it was terrifying, of course. Needless to say, I politely declined and decided to just observe from the sidelines. And over the sort of coming weeks and months, I kind of got immersed in a scene where I got to witness firsthand consumption of this compound at scale. And we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So what happened? I got introduced to a subculture that was the glowing embers of a once thriving rave scene in England, in the UK. So late 80s, early 90s, this was a booming new scene, probably fueled quite dramatically by compounds like MDMA. I sort of found out and got educated that this had been essentially destroyed by government, as always, and I think they made it literally legal to put on an outdoor rave. So what I was experiencing was a much more regulated, fragmented, commercialized version of what was. And I guess the dream had been kind of crushed somewhat. Regardless, I got to experience tens of thousands of people getting together and putting on more, regulated indoor type parties. But what was interesting is, what I saw, because I regularly saw thousands and thousands and thousands of people getting on, really getting on. Having a great time, in fact, and all seem to be consuming this killer compound. How many bodies did I see? How many deaths did I hear about? Zero. Got me thinking, how many people who kind of peddle the news or has so much advice for me about this subject and these compounds were here, present in this room? No. So I kind of really started to kind of, see through it all a little bit. Bear in mind, I'm quite young at this time, still a teenager, but kind of, finding out that what I hear about news and information from supposedly trusted sources, like teachers even, is maybe not completely true, starts to open your eyes a little bit. So I kind of, needless to say, tentatively started to explore in this space a little bit. I mean, to say the next few years changed my life would be an understatement. So it'd be reckless for me to say that there are no risks. As with anything in life, there are risks. When you drive a car, don't drive with your eyes shut. It's just common sense. So there are precautions, and in another video I'll go into detail about the MDMA and ecstasy experience. experience, you know, in depth. It deserves a video of its own. You know, for anybody who hasn't experienced it, you know, it's worthy of a video to, you know, go in depth there. But, you know, just to, you know, at a high level, to say that the, you know, these compounds open you up emotionally is, you know, barely scratching the surface of the experience. But, you know, in terms of what I want to talk about, you know, that's probably just the main theme here of what's fueling this scene and the experience and the effect that it, you know, can have on your life and did have on my life. You know, you've got to kind of like imagine the scene. This is a group of young boys, really. You know, I can only speak from my perspective, but, you know, growing up as a working class lad from London in England, you know, I attended a pretty old-fashioned, pretty violent boys' school. So, you know, it kind of gave us a particular type of upbringing and perspective on things. So to be kind of thrust into this world, to wade in this ecstatic ocean of music and sound and feelings and emotions, and, you know, have thousands and thousands of people around you and strangers from all over the country and sometimes the world, to all be there at that moment together and experience something, it's hard to describe, to be completely honest. But just, you know, locally, in terms of just its effect on me and my little peer group, you know, just imagine that group of young men able to more openly express themselves. You know, your barriers, emotional barriers, are kind of just melted away. And not in like a bravado sense, like maybe being drunk. You know, it really is more in terms of feeling more confident and more trusting in other people, and genuinely feeling more comfortable expressing how you're feeling. You know, these sort of big parties could just go on for hours and hours and hours, and, you know, quite honestly, you could spend half the time just sitting down talking with your friends. And, you know, I think at that point in life, being able to kind of sit down, I think it's especially poignant for men, young men. Being able to sit down and have really, really kind of heartfelt, meaningful conversations, talking about your lives, problems, stresses, maybe family issues, relationship problems, speaking to each other about each other, how you feel about each other. You know, when you're in that sort of state, you know, looking at each other, you see a childlike innocence and openness in each other. You know, there's kind of the cliche of the kind of wide-eyed, you know, kind of thing, but that's true. You know, you're looking at each other, the empathy that just envelops you, and the connection you have with somebody is unlike anything I can really compare it to in life. When you're in depth, like in a deep conversation and really opening up, the feeling of trust and love just builds and builds. And, you know, I'm sure there's some people just like, yeah, whatever, you're high. What does that even mean? Like, what does it mean to be able to say things that are inside you, that are true? Like, there'll be moments where you just tell somebody something, and it's not until the words have left your mouth that you hear it and you think, wow, I didn't even know that was inside me. Like, we live our lives in a emotional vault. Like, we really do. And, you know, again, it kind of depends on your upbringing. So I can't speak for everybody who maybe had a, you know, different kind of life, and just made me feel very comfortable talking about certain things and very emotionally aware, or had that kind of support of that household or whatever it may be. But generally speaking, you grab a bunch of young men from that part of the world, then showing weakness or vulnerability is a hard thing to do. I think being able to look in each other's eyes and ask for help or show weakness or talk through something, and you can laugh and you can cry, you can bawl your eyes out, and you can have a huge hug. Oh, the hugs. I honestly don't think I quite understood the impact of what was happening at the time. It's all a bit of a whirlwind. You're young. Like, this is an exciting place. These are crazy new experiences and emotions. I haven't even touched on the kind of entheogenic side of the experience, which, like I said, I'll get into in another video. I mean, there are some life-changing, experiences to be had. But that aside for now, just that kind of the empathy side, that communication. I mean, I believe ecstasy, sure I heard this, I think it was initially called empathy back in the day, because before it was all made illegal, it used to be a therapeutic medicine for, I think, married couples to go through therapy. Which kind of brings me on to my kind of major point here. As a youth, you're almost oblivious to what's happening. You're just in it. Now, as I've got older and reflected, and obviously life becomes a lot more simple in some ways. Straight, I'll say simple, but balanced, and calmer, stable. And, watching the media narrative change a bit. And I've talked about it before, but seeing headlines about MDMA therapy, and obviously I'm like, wow, what's this? And the more I find out about it, hearing about talking through PTSD with soldiers, it really kind of like made me think. Obviously, like those therapy sessions and what's happening there, the research, it's it's great because I think it's important. It's an important step for us, for public understanding of these compounds. I also really think it's cheesy as hell and embarrassing. I couldn't think of anything more awkward than sitting down and just like rolling with some doctor who's not just talking through my life. But again, I can't sneer at it because for people who have not experienced it, just being in that setting and talking to it must be amazing. So I think it's great work, and obviously it's only a positive thing overall. But it made me think. I was like, well, this has been my life. Talking on MDMA. And that's when it really hit me. I was like, as young men, I say men a lot, we did know some girls, promise, but inevitably, coming from a boys' school, there was a solid group of young men that kind of, really knew each other. And, spending those kind of core developmental years, like essentially really coming of age, talking, laughing, really crying, and just everything. Like, we all come from our slightly different lives. Some of us had stable homes, some of us had broken homes, some of us were poor as hell, some had some money, some had illness in the family, some had their own illnesses. But being able to just kind of really express ourselves and hug it out and be able to tell each other that we're there for each other and create these bonds, they were really long lasting. I mean, it created friendships that to this day, it's hard to penetrate those friendships. It's hard to explain to people what it means to have gone through these kind of emotional experiences. Funny enough, just as a little segue, I do have a strange place in my heart for like war films. And it sounds a bit bizarre, but whenever I watch like a really good kind of something about the Vietnam War or something, a bunch of young men just taken off to a strange country to go and fight in a war and no one understands what's going on. There's lots of great ones out there, but sort of seeing that effect it has on people, and seeing those soldiers return and then talking about the friendships and the bonds, and there's something about going through extreme things, and no doubt a lot of time talking, communicating, and essentially bringing to bear your soul a bit. It resonates with me, and that's why I like the connection there of the MDMA therapy. Of course, our lives were incomparable to being sent off to war, obviously. But regardless, it's all relative, and I think being able to just essentially talk things through, and with your peers, not some shrink, being able to talk through it with your peers and create friendships and bonds for life. It was life-changing, and yes, like I say, it was only in retrospect that now, looking back, an older man, that I can kind of see the benefit of that. I can see that it wasn't just about getting high and dancing. It was almost like that was just something to do in between talking, like in between the experience that was happening to you as a group of people. I haven't even touched on communication with strangers and all that, because this is what I think was the fundamental movement behind this scene once upon a time. And I'm sure there's massive parallels to the acid wave, Summer of Love and all that back in sort of 60s in America and stuff. But I think particularly with these compounds, again, the entheogenic side of it aside, but just the emotional impact, I kind of feel so much gratitude. I'm so lucky that I got to see it for what it really was. I got to unveil the propaganda, the lies, the complete bullshit. It's a scene fueled by empathy and attachment and love and communication. Yes, people die all the time about all sorts of things. I'm not going to get into the details here, but underlying activity here will not kill you, okay? Lots of things can kill you in any environment, making bad mistakes, being drunk, stepping out of traffic, etc. So like I said, I'll get into that. But it was more to do with the media missing the point. Everybody missing the point. I don't want to be angry, but it does make me angry. I'm glad that I somehow managed to dodge it and I see it for what it was, and then get the reward, get the experiences, change my perception, change my understanding of how to feel emotions, and what was even possible, how to communicate, create bonds and get through tough times and create long-lasting friendships for life, brothers for life. So obviously I'm thankful that I got that, but then I'm angry that the majority of people just are still stuck with that propaganda. I'm not making a negative video. It's a beautiful experience and it's a beautiful thing to have happened. It was just really, really interesting to remember how I entered it and where my head was at and why I thought that way versus the beautiful, stunning reality of what came out of it and how it changed me. So yeah, I'll follow up with a video about some details on what it's like, because it's something else. But until next time.